Okay, back to school time is coming very quickly, and this is your year to become a straight A student. Honestly, I've never really thought of myself as a very smart person, but getting A's has less to do with how smart you are and more just to do with how you study. So here are some of my study and productivity tips and strategies that have helped me become a straight A student. So I first wanted to touch on time management and planning. My first tip is actually something that I got as a tip when I entered university in first year. A prof told us that you should always write down the date that your assignment, your midterm, your project's due, and then go 2 weeks before it and write again in your planner, this is due in 2 weeks. So they suggested doing this and I found it very helpful. And even if you're not going to study 2 weeks in advance for the midterm, even though you might want to, it acts as a reminder, and just seeing it in my planner, it like activates my brain to start thinking about it and start planning when I'm going to study. Next is knowing when to study and taking breaks. So first, you need to know when your prime study time is. I know that I am most productive in the morning / early afternoon. After that, I kind of hit a slump, and I think this is the same for a lot of people just because we're getting tired midday and into the evening. And everyone always says this, but it is so important to take breaks. I always think of my time in about like 30-minute units, so I think like, okay, 30 minutes to studying psych, 30 minutes to working on my English assignment, 30-minute break. I think everybody knows this, but phones are such a big distraction for when you're studying. I think most of us when we're studying spend a lot of time on our computers, which is also connected to most of our phones. So first of all, put your computer on do not disturb. This has helped me so much not seeing the little red dots pop up on my messages. Every time I saw a dot, I would just like click it, text back to my friends, text back to my boyfriend, but no. You need to put your laptop on do not disturb or just turn off your notifications in general for your texts while you're studying or doing work. One thing that I always do if I'm at the library or a coffee shop, I try to put my phone just behind my laptop screen, and even though that's so simple, it works pretty well for me. Out of sight, out of mind. I don't think about it. I sometimes forget that I put it back there. So that really helps, but I know sometimes it's a lot harder than just putting it behind your laptop screen. So if I'm really down bad for my phone that day, I will either put it in like my drawer, or sometimes I even hide it under like my duvet or something, just somewhere where I almost forget I even put it there so that I'm not distracted until my break time comes. And this has really helped me just stay focused on my task and use the phone more as a reward and not just something I'm using throughout my whole study session unless needed. So I think this is probably the most important section, and that is how I study for midterms / memorize. So I have been doing this technique religiously, I think, since elementary school, like in grade 6 or something. I've done it all throughout high school and university, and it's really worked well for me. Obviously, it might differ if you're in a different field. I am in arts and psychology, so it's worked well for that, which I know has a lot of memorization. And so that is making study guides. They are similar to making flashcards, but a little bit different. So first, I will just take a lined piece of paper and fold it in half, and then I will just go through all of my notes and I will write out questions and terms and then the answer on the other half of the sheet. Then basically you can use it double-sided, so you do that on the first side and you do it on the second side. This is already a really good technique because even if you don't study the study guides, you are physically writing out everything, so this is studying in itself. Depending on how big the midterm is or the final, this will usually take me a while to do. I start doing it about a week before probably, and then I will finish maybe 3 days before, and that's when I will start looking over them. So I usually start by just rereading everything that I've written out because it's been a little while, I've forgotten the material a bit. So I go over it, I read it, usually just in my head. So after I do a round of all of that in my head, I will start to verbally say these out loud. So I will read the term, read the question, and then I will recite out loud what I can remember. And this is a game changer. It basically goes off the technique of kind of teaching it to someone else. I'll walk around my room if I'm feeling a little antsy and I'll just read it out. Or sometimes I'll even look in the mirror and I will do it, and it's almost like teaching myself, which is kind of funny, but this definitely has been my game changer for memorization and just ingraining it in my head. So 100% recommend doing study guides. And then for midterms and finals, along with the study guide, I'll often copy and paste all the learning objectives from all the lectures that I am studying, and I will just write out all the answers. I will go through my notes while I'm doing my study guides or on a separate time and just fill in the learning objectives. And then about a day before, I will recopy and paste the learning objectives without the answers, and I will just go in and freely fill those in. And at that point, it's almost like practice questions, so you're just going off memory, and it's also a really good gauge for seeing what parts you know well and what you don't. So if you need to last minute study a certain thing or a certain objective, then you are all good to go for that. So my next tip for tests is try to predict the questions you are going to get. So this might sound kind of crazy, like you're not a mind reader, obviously. But if the test is short answer, long answer, or like an essay style, you can easily predict the questions a lot of the time. So often the questions are based from the learning objectives. If it is the final, definitely look at the learning objectives for the whole course in the syllabus. And if it is for the midterm, then just go off the lecture ones. Usually the written questions are about comparing and contrasting theories, or looking at big general themes in the course. This isn't always going to work, but even if you don't predict the questions perfectly that are going to be on the exam, making your own practice questions and kind of getting in the mindset of the teacher or the prof and how they're gonna ask you and test your knowledge is always a good idea. So I actually talked about this tip before. I will put the video that I did up here. So one important thing to think about when you're doing online quizzes or midterms, etc., is that it's all about the organization. Most of them are open book now, so it's more about making sure you either know the material without looking, or if you don't know the material very well, it's more about knowing where to find the answers and being very organized. So I would suggest copying and pasting the textbook chapter from your PDF or your online textbook into a doc for that specific quiz or specific midterm. So if you're doing chapter 1 to 3, only copy and paste those into a doc rather than command Fing through the whole PDF or the whole textbook. This makes everything a lot easier. Obviously don't do this if you don't have an open book exam, do not cheat. But if it is about the organization and your ability to just pull up that information, then just make sure you're organized and ready to go with that. I also wanted to briefly touch on projects and papers. I would rather do a test than a project or paper, so I really dread those usually. But being in arts, I do have to do a lot of papers. I have done quite a few papers, and one of the biggest things I dread about them is when they say pick your own topic. And I know it's supposed to be like that so you can explore something that you really like, but for me, being someone who is very indecisive, this is like too much for me. One thing that really stuck with me and that my prof said was don't treat picking your paper topic like picking the name for your firstborn child. Don't take it too seriously. If it is your like thesis or something, obviously you're gonna be spending more time on it and it's more important to you. But if it's just a paper in one undergrad class, don't overthink it. That's also when the procrastination starts for me, because if I can't think of a paper topic or I'm stressing about that, then I'm just putting everything off and it's just gonna get a lot harder as time goes on. So just commit to a topic and start brainstorming. Don't overthink it. My next tip for projects and papers, which I actually just started doing recently, and I don't know if everyone was already doing this, but use your rubric as a checklist. So as you write your paper or even after, go through the rubric. You can pretend, I guess, that you're grading or just use it as a checklist. So now I wanted to talk strategy a bit. And this is really important because I think a lot of people often think that good grades are about your intelligence, like they're a measure of someone's intelligence. But really, good grades are just about how much work you put in, how you strategize, and how you study. One of the biggest things I've learned throughout university is that the prof matters. Choosing a prof that you like or has good reviews is gonna be a game changer more than even the subject that they're teaching. So personally, I always use Rate My Prof. In first year, I did not know about this for some reason, so I just randomly picked sections of courses that I wanted to be in, and then later I found out about Rate My Prof and I was like, wow, I should have looked at this. So basically, Rate My Prof just is exactly what it sounds like. It's ratings of professors. This is a very useful tool. You can see what ratings they've gotten, what percentage of people would say they would take the course again. People have made comments about like maybe they're a hard marker, they have a lot of readings, a really good lecturer, etc. I'm not quite sure if this website is for everywhere. I know it is definitely in Canada and the States, but you just put in your university and then you can search up your prof. In terms of professors as well, if you have liked a professor, then I would highly suggest trying to take another course with them, not only because you enjoyed their course and everything, but also because it helps build a connection with them. So if you are looking to go to grad school or you're just wanting to get more experience and talk to a professor, it's really nice when you've taken a previous course with them and you can talk to them about that, you can connect, and they get to know you better. In terms of strategy, something that also I never really thought about when I was in first and maybe even second year is really taking into account how much things weigh. So in first year, I remember just being like, oh my gosh, I have 4 finals, whatever. I just thought of them as finals. But in reality, like one final was worth 20% and one was worth 45%. Even though everything counts, don't get caught up too much in little things. So for instance, I had a project that was worth 15% and I found that I was spending way too much time on it. I was getting too stressed out about it, and for the percentage of my grade that I was weighing, it was not worth the hassle for me. Obviously, I still tried on it, but just don't overthink it if it's not weighing as much. So lastly, I wanted to discuss environment for studying. I personally find that I study best just in my room or alone at the library. Studying in groups can be really beneficial if you are teaching it back to each other and in the same course, but I've also found that sometimes when I study with another person, it can spiral. Like maybe both of us are saying like, oh, this is so hard, and we kind of just spiral with each other, or the other person is going on their phone more, and so I want to go on my phone more. So personally, I find it best to study alone when I'm actually trying to crack down. I would just suggest taking advantage of studying with someone who has a similar studying style to you. I also really like to study at coffee shops. I do that quite often, and I did throughout my whole university experience, but knowing which coffee shop to go to is important. So I've been to some and they play music so loud, and you might not think like, you're like, oh, it's a coffee shop, like I'm just gonna go study there. But sometimes you have to think about it more, like how loud it is there, just with the people talking, how social it is there, what kind of music they're playing, the vibes. I have found that I've gone to some coffee shops and I've ended up just not studying there because I had to leave. It was too loud, or it was just like not the vibe to study. There's even like weird things, like sometimes the table doesn't fit comfortably to laptops. So if I went with someone else, our laptops are like bumping against each other and there's no room. So little like practical things like that sometimes you don't think about, but think about it if you're choosing a coffee shop to go to. And then I know for me, if I am studying in my room or in my own space, that I need it to be clean. Mentally, I cannot have a dirty room and then focus on my school. If there's like a load of laundry that needs folding, or I need to make my bed, I will do that first just so my mind is decluttered and I can focus on school. And then in terms of music, I sometimes like to listen to music when I'm studying, nothing crazy. It kind of depends on the mood I'm in. I'll also link down below my playlist that I use to study. I've used this since first year and I use it to this day. So this playlist works for me, but yeah, just listen to music that makes you feel good, calm, maybe some lo-fi beats. I don't know, depends on your vibe. You can make different playlists for that. Romanticize it. Now let's talk planners. I am 110% a physical planner girly. It's kind of like having a hardcover of a book rather than a Kindle. I like to write everything out, and I like seeing it out on a paper and everything, and highlighting stuff and making it look cute. So here are some of my recommendations. I used to always get the one from Target every year. As you can see, they are pretty thin. They were really good for when I wanted to bring it to school because they fit in my backpack easily. They weren't very heavy, and obviously they were very affordable as well. And then I also would recommend this one from Chapters. It has lines rather than just open space, which at first I wasn't a fan of. It was from Chapters/Indigo, so it was a bit more expensive, maybe like $20. And then the current planner I am using is this one, which I got from HomeSense actually. It is very compact and small and cute, and it does the job, and it was only about $12, so very cheap and affordable, and I would highly suggest that one as well. Of course, when I'm studying, I also always have my Nalgene, my laptop, and my AirPods, and then I always bring a little pencil case as well with my favorite Muji pens in it and some pastel highlighters. My biggest tip in general, which everyone says, is to study smarter, not harder. I remember in first year, my friend asked me to go study with him, so I went to the library and he showed me how he was studying, and his laptop was just like notes, and he had highlighted things in different colors, and literally, I kid you not, the whole page was just highlighted. And I was like, I don't know how this is studying, and I don't know how this is helping you. Try to study smarter, not harder, strategize, be organized, and just get to know what works for you, and once you do, stick with that. So those are all of the study and productivity tips that I have right now to become a straight A student this year. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it helpful a little. But before I go, I really wanted to emphasize at the end of this video that while good grades can make you feel really good, and they may be important depending on what career you're going into, they do not define your worth, and they do not define who you are. This has been something that has been really hard for me to come to terms with throughout my time at school, and I think it's just important to acknowledge this. It is like the worst thing when you spend so much time on a project and you put so much effort into something and the grade that you get does not reflect that back. Just remember that grades can be subjective as well. So if that project didn't go as well as you thought it was going to, that is not a reflection of you. It might also reflect like the TA and how they perceived it. But yeah, just remember that your grades do not really reflect your intelligence even, or who you are as a person. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a good back to school if you're going back to school. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!